You think you understand the people around you, that you can sense when someone's toxic, when a person's energy feels heavy, or when a behavior crosses the line of what's acceptable. But what if the real threats aren't the obvious ones? What if the most harmful individuals appear kind, polite, even loving, sometimes members of your own family? While you focus on avoiding the visible villains, you may unknowingly open the door to something far more dangerous, the unconscious mind of others quietly merging with your own. Carl Gustav Jung dedicated his life to exploring these invisible forces. In his work, The Ego and the Unconscious, he revealed that most of what truly drives human behavior lies outside conscious awareness. This doesn't just apply to you, it applies to everyone. And that's exactly where the danger hides. Because when a person is blind to their own darkness, their shadow doesn't vanish. It seeks a host. And often, that host is you. Think about it. How many times have you felt emotionally drained after a simple conversation? How many times have you been blamed for something you never did? Or been treated as the savior of someone else's chaos? Jung called this psychological mechanism projection, when people unconsciously transfer onto others what they refuse to see in themselves. The moment that happens, you stop being seen as a person and become a symbol, a mirror, an imagined enemy, an idealized hero. Yet none of those roles represent who you truly are. The most disturbing part is that you rarely realize it's happening. You think you're helping, being compassionate, being mature. But in reality, you're being pulled into a psychological battlefield that isn't yours, trying to fix conflicts that aren't yours, until those foreign emotions start controlling you instead. Not all danger comes from those with malicious intent. Jung warned that the gravest threats often arise from people who are unaware of their own inner chaos, individuals ruled not by reason, but by unintegrated, unconscious forces. These people aren't necessarily evil. They're dangerous precisely because they act without understanding what drives them. Their influence is subtle, creeping in through kindness, empathy, and emotional connection. You've likely met such a person. At first, they seem vulnerable, sensitive, perhaps even profound. But gradually, you notice that being around them leaves you exhausted, confused, and burdened with emotions that aren't yours. This is the unconscious manipulator, someone whose unresolved wounds seek healing through others, instead of through self-reflection. Jung once said, "What we do not confront within ourselves will return to us as fate." And often that fate has a name, a face, and sits across the table from you. The unconscious manipulator is driven by repressed emotions, unhealed trauma, and fragmented pieces of self. Instead of looking inward, they project outward, turning you into a canvas for their internal conflicts. They live in a state of chronic projection, and as Jung noted, projection is a natural psychological process, but when unrecognized, it becomes destructive. In The Ego and the Unconscious, he explained that projection blinds us, imprisoning us in a world where we no longer see others as they are, but only as symbols of what we hide within ourselves. That's exactly what happens here. They don't see you. They see the part of themselves they've lost, feared, or denied. And they react to that illusion as if it were real. To maintain control, they often cast themselves as victims. Every hurt they feel is your fault. Every disappointment your failure. Every burst of anger your provocation. Over time, you begin to question your own sanity. Was I insensitive? Did I say something wrong? Am I the problem? And that's when emotional manipulation takes full control. Silent yet devastating. Asterisk according to Jung. Every individual carries within them a shadow, the repressed side of the psyche that holds instincts, impulses, and emotions we refuse to accept. Most people hide from this side, pretending to be entirely kind, rational, or spiritual. But repression does not destroy the shadow, it only makes it stronger. The more we deny it, the more it manipulates our behavior from beneath the surface. This is why control often disguises itself as care. The manipulator, for instance, might say they're just trying to help, when in truth, they're trying to dominate your reality. They confuse love with possession, empathy with intrusion, and guidance with control. Jung described this as the possession of the ego by the shadow. The ego, believing itself virtuous, becomes a puppet for the very darkness it refuses to acknowledge. You can see this in relationships where one person constantly criticizes for your own good, or becomes jealous under the pretense of love. They say they want to protect you, but what they truly fear is losing the sense of power your presence gives them. The irony is painful. The more they try to control others, the more controlled they become by their own unconscious drives. Jung wrote in Psychological Types that the shadow is not evil by nature. It's simply the part of the self that has been denied the right to exist. When we reject it, it seeks expression through projection and domination. But when we confront it consciously, it becomes a source of authenticity and strength. Facing the shadow requires brutal honesty. It's the courage to admit, yes, I am capable of envy, anger, pride, and manipulation, but I choose not to be ruled by them. Most people never reach that point. They live as masks, convinced they are good while unconsciously wounding others. Jung warned that until we bring the shadow to light, we will call it fate. Every argument, betrayal, and manipulation will repeat like a script written by a hidden hand. And that hand, if we look closely, is our own. Some of the most destructive people you'll ever meet aren't villains by design. They're individuals convinced they're doing the right thing. Jung believed that moral superiority is one of the most dangerous illusions. When someone assumes they're on the side of good, they stop questioning their motives. Their kindness becomes a mask for power, their compassion a method of control. Think about the friend who constantly advises, but never listens. Or the parent who dictates every step of their child's life in the name of protection. On the surface, these actions seem loving, but beneath them lies fear of chaos, loss, or inadequacy. Jung wrote that people cling to control when they can't control their own inner world. They become obsessed with shaping others because they cannot shape themselves. In Aion, Jung described the danger of identifying too closely with virtue. He wrote, "The brighter the light, the darker the shadow." In other words, the more someone insists on their moral perfection, the more darkness they're hiding. That's why moral crusaders, fixers, and self-proclaimed saviors often end up doing the harm they claim to prevent. They can't see that their obsession with goodness is a disguise for their hunger for dominance. History is full of examples. Revolutions born from the dream of equality that turn into tyranny. Religions preaching compassion that burn heretics alive. The same pattern repeats on smaller scales, inside families, friendships, even love. The tragedy is that these people rarely realize what they've become. They don't see themselves as oppressors. They see themselves as heroes. Jung warned that until we make peace with our own capacity for evil, we will unconsciously project it onto others. We'll fight imaginary devils while ignoring the one whispering inside us. And the more righteous we feel, the more dangerous we become, not because we are bad, but because we refuse to believe we could ever be. Jung often said that relationships are mirrors, not windows. We don't truly see the other person. We see ourselves reflected through them. This is why certain people trigger intense emotions in us, both love and hate. They awaken the parts of our psyche that we've buried or denied. When we feel irrationally angry, jealous, or enchanted by someone, it's usually our unconscious speaking, showing us a hidden truth about who we are. Imagine someone who's deeply irritated by arrogance. They may not realize that their own suppressed desire for confidence hides behind that irritation. Or someone obsessed with saving a partner, unconsciously, they may be trying to heal the same wounds they never faced within themselves. Jung called this process projection, and he warned that the more we repress, the more violently we project. This is why toxic cycles repeat. You attract people who reflect your own inner conflicts. The manipulative boss mirrors your fear of authority. The distant lover mirrors your own inability to open up. Life keeps showing you the same lesson until you learn to see it. Jung described this as synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that reveal the structure of your inner world. But here's the difficult truth. Most people run from these mirrors. Instead of asking, "What is this person revealing about me?" they blame the other. They change partners, jobs, or friends, only to end up in the same emotional pattern again. The lesson follows them because the problem isn't out there. It's within. True healing begins when we stop fighting the reflection. When we understand that the people who hurt us are also our teachers, showing us where we're still unconscious. Jung wrote that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. The moment you take that seriously, your relationships stop being battlegrounds and start becoming paths to self-awareness. Emotional control is one of the subtlest forms of manipulation, and most people don't even realize when they're doing it. Jung observed that when individuals fear abandonment or rejection, they unconsciously try to control others through emotion, guilt, silence, approval, or withdrawal. These tactics are not always deliberate. They arise from deep insecurity, from the terror of being powerless. Consider how easily guilt can become a weapon. A person might say, "After all I've done for you," not to express pain, but to bind someone emotionally. Or they may withhold affection until their partner behaves the way they want. This dynamic often appears in families, where love becomes conditional, a form of currency instead of connection. Jung believed that such patterns come from an unhealed child within, still begging to be seen and loved on its own terms. What makes emotional control so insidious is that it hides behind vulnerability. People who manipulate through guilt often appear kind, even self-sacrificing. They don't yell or demand, they suffer quietly, expecting others to notice. But beneath the surface lies resentment, and resentment always seeks repayment. The more someone believes they're the good one, the more invisible their manipulation becomes. Jung wrote that emotional dependence is a kind of psychic possession. When our happiness depends on another's behavior, we lose our autonomy. The solution isn't to stop caring. It's to take back responsibility for our own inner world. Only by confronting our fears of abandonment and rejection can we love freely, without control or expectation. Freedom, Jung said, begins when we stop asking others to regulate our emotions. When we can sit with our loneliness, our anger, and our fear without needing to project them onto someone else, that's when the unconscious starts to heal. Until then, every bond will secretly be a chain. In a world addicted to noise, silence is one of the rarest and most threatening forms of power. Jung suggested that silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of self. It's what remains when we stop performing for others, stop defending our image, and simply observe. That quiet awareness exposes manipulation instantly, because manipulators depend on reaction. They feed on emotional response, anger, guilt, justification. When you stop reacting, their control dissolves. Think of arguments where one person refuses to engage in shouting or justification. The silence unsettles the other, because it removes their power to provoke. In that moment, the energy dynamic flips. The one who can remain still holds the higher ground. Jung believed this capacity for stillness came from individuation, the process of becoming whole and self-contained. No longer defined by external approval. But silence can be dangerous too if used as punishment or withdrawal. Some people use it to control, to make others chase after their attention. That's not power, that's fear disguised as superiority. Real silence doesn't seek to dominate. It seeks understanding. It's the strength to stay grounded while others project their chaos onto you. In therapy, Jung noticed that when patients finally stopped explaining themselves and sat in quiet reflection, their unconscious began to speak through dreams and intuition. The noise of justification had been drowning out truth. In modern life, this still applies. We often fill every moment with distraction, terrified of what might emerge in the quiet. True silence reveals your boundaries. It shows where you end and others begin. It teaches that not every battle deserves your energy, and not every question requires an answer. When you master silence, manipulation loses its grip, because silence, unlike control, cannot be taken. It's the language of self-possession. Jung believed that wholeness, not goodness, is the true goal of human development. Most people spend their lives chasing the image of being good kind, moral, spiritual, while rejecting anything that doesn't fit that identity. But the psyche doesn't want purity. It wants balance. When you try to live only in the light, the shadow grows stronger, waiting for the moment to reassert itself. You can see this in people who suddenly snap after years of being calm and polite, or in public figures whose private lives contradict their perfect image. Jung said that repression is like pushing air underwater. It always comes back up, just in distorted form. The path of individuation requires integrating both sides, acknowledging the selfish, jealous, or prideful impulses without letting them rule you. The shadow, Jung wrote, is 90% pure gold. That means what we fear in ourselves often hides our greatest potential. Anger can become assertiveness. Envy can evolve into inspiration. The trick is not to fight the darkness, but to listen to what it's trying to teach. Every emotion, even the uncomfortable ones, carries energy that can be transformed if faced consciously. But this process demands humility. To integrate the shadow, you must admit that you are not purely good and that no one else is purely evil. The people we demonize often reflect the traits we've disowned. Jung warned that societies projecting their collective shadow create enemies and wars to avoid looking within. The same happens in individuals. When we can't face our flaws, we attack them in others. Healing begins when you stop choosing between light and dark. When you can hold both, your virtues and your flaws, without shame, that's when the inner war ends. That's when you stop being ruled by what you refuse to see. Some people don't need to yell, explode, or accuse to drain you. Their method is quieter but far more insidious. Jung described the type of person who feeds not on your presence, but on your energy. These are the psychic vampires, individuals who extract attention, empathy, and emotional labor from others until there is nothing left. Unlike overt manipulators, their influence is subtle: chronic neediness, silent dependence, and emotional demands disguised as affection. At first, you may feel helpful, generous, and nurturing toward them. But over time, you notice that your own energy is disappearing. You feel exhausted, distracted, and unsure where your feelings end and theirs begin. The psychic vampire thrives on this blurring of boundaries. They need constant engagement, reassurance, and validation, not because they're evil, but because they are unresolved within themselves. Jung explained that unresolved psychic dependencies create symbiotic relationships where individuality dissolves. Living with such a person is existentially draining. You begin to question your own needs, feel selfish for wanting space, or guilty for desiring silence. They are experts at role reversal. The needy become accusers, the dependent become controllers. Slowly, your life centers around maintaining their equilibrium while ignoring your own. The moment you recognize the pattern, you can set boundaries, reclaim your energy, and disengage from the symbiosis. He emphasized that everyone has the potential to fall into these patterns. Psychic vampirism is not limited to one type of personality. The difference is who takes responsibility for their unconscious impulses and who projects them outward. The path to freedom, Jung argued, begins when we consciously distinguish our energy from the unconscious demands of others. None of us is immune. We all carry shadows, complexes, and unintegrated parts of ourselves. Jung reminded us that the difference between those who harm others unconsciously and those who do not lies in awareness. recognizing your own tendencies, whether as a manipulator, a bearer of the persona, a complex individual, or even a psychic vampire, is the first step toward breaking free from unconscious cycles. This video has been a mirror. It has shown how invisible forces shape our interactions, influence our emotions, and bind us to patterns we barely understand. The first step toward liberation is noticing these forces without judgment. Awareness is not about blame. It is about reclaiming sovereignty over your own mind. When you can observe your reactions, differentiate between your feelings and those projected onto you, and face the parts of yourself you've denied, you step out of unconscious influence. Jung insisted that growth comes through courage, the courage to look inside, confront uncomfortable truths, and accept that the psyche is a mixture of light and dark. Only then can we stop being vessels for the unconscious of others and begin to live as whole, integrated beings. Relationships cease to be battlegrounds and become arenas of conscious choice, where connection is genuine rather than imposed. Now it's your turn. Reflect on the people who have impacted you and the ways you may have unknowingly mirrored their unconscious patterns. Which profiles resonate with your experiences? Which might exist within you? By asking these questions, you begin the process of individuation, the lifelong journey toward wholeness. The journey does not end here. Each step into awareness diminishes the unconscious forces that once controlled your life. The more light we shed on the shadows, both in ourselves and others, the less power they hold. Jung's teaching is clear. Liberation begins when you stop being a hostage to unconscious dynamics and reclaim your energy, your boundaries, and your essence. This is the first and most profound form of freedom. If this video has made you see people differently, even you, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Also, share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.